The spilled coffee wasn't the first sign, but it was the one that shattered my world into a million irreparable pieces. It was a Tuesday morning, crisp and bright. The kind of day that usually promised prosperity for the Grandmont, our family hotel, a beacon of old-world charm nestled by the coast. I was overseeing breakfast service, my usual routine, when Clara, Michael's fiancée, stumbled, sending a tray of freshly brewed coffee cascading across the polished marble floor. Her face, usually so composed, was flushed, not with embarrassment, but with a strange, almost frantic energy. She exchanged a quick, furtive glance with Robert, my husband of 47 years. A glance so laden with unspoken meaning that it prickled the hairs on my arms. What could possibly bind them in such a clandestine understanding, especially when one was my son's beloved, and the other, the man who shared my bed, my life, and my dreams for nearly half a century? And what exactly had I just glimpsed in that fleeting, pale, conspiratorial moment? Something dark and predatory lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly innocent connection. How many layers of deceit could one heart truly bear before it simply stopped beating altogether? That glance, so brief, so charged, became an anchor point in the storm that was about to rage through my life, though I didn't know it then. I simply felt an icy tendril of unease coil in my stomach, a premonition that whispered of something fundamentally wrong. Robert had been different these past few months, subtly at first, then more overtly. Late nights at the office, always some urgent deal, some critical document requiring his undivided attention. He would return home, smelling of stale cigar smoke and a perfume that was decidedly not mine, a cloying sweetness that made my head ache. I dismissed it as stress, the demands of running a historic establishment in an ever-changing market. He was getting older, I told myself, perhaps less resilient. Clara, too, had changed. Her once effervescent spirit had been replaced by a nervous energy, a tendency to flit away from conversations, particularly those concerning the wedding planning. She'd become exceptionally possessive of her phone, often excusing herself to take calls in hushed tones, her back turned. I attributed it to pre-wedding jitters, the natural anxieties of a young woman about to embark on a lifelong journey. How utterly blind I had been, how foolishly trusting. The true unraveling began a week after the coffee incident. Robert had left his study door ajar, a rare oversight. He was meticulous about privacy, especially regarding his financial papers. A stray gust of wind had swept some documents from his desk, scattering them onto the Persian rug. As I bent to collect them, my gaze snagged on a letterhead that made my blood run cold. It was from a real estate development firm, one known for acquiring historic properties and tearing them down for modern complexes. My hands trembled as I read further, my eyes scanning words like acquisition, valuation, and closing date. But it was a phrase buried deep within the technical jargon that truly stole my breath. The Grandmont Hotel, pending transfer of ownership from Elara Vance. My name, my hotel, without my knowledge. A cold sweat broke out on my brow. My initial shock quickly morphed into a searing anger, an inferno that threatened to consume me. Robert, my husband, was selling our home, our legacy, without so much as a word. My mind, though reeling, moved with a surprising clarity. I remembered Robert's late nights, Clara's secret calls, the strange tension between them. Could it be connected? I forced myself to breathe, to think rationally. I carefully rearranged the papers exactly as I had found them, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had to know more. That night, sleep offered no solace. Every creak of the old house, every whisper of the wind against the window panes, sounded like a harbinger of doom. I lay beside Robert, listening to his even breathing, feeling an alien chill where warmth once resided. This man, the architect of my happiness, was now apparently the architect of my ruin. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and carefully curated normalcy. I watched Robert and Clara with a hawk's precision, dissecting every word, every gesture. Clara's visits to the hotel, once frequent and open, became almost secretive. She would meet Robert in his study, the door firmly shut, their conversations muffled. I noticed her attire change too, from her usual tasteful ensembles to more expensive, designer pieces. A new watch gleamed on her wrist. A diamond bracelet sparkled beneath her sleeve. Had Robert bought these for her, using money from what? From us. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I knew I couldn't confront Robert directly. Not yet. I needed irrefutable proof. Not just a gut feeling or a scattered document. This was when my son, Michael, entered the periphery of my suspicions. He was normally so attuned to the rhythm of our family, so perceptive. But he seemed blissfully unaware, immersed in wedding plans, talking about their future, a future built on a foundation of sand. I felt a pang of guilt, a mother's instinct to protect, but also a fierce determination to uncover the truth, for all our sakes. One evening, unable to bear the gnawing anxiety, I decided to confide in the one person I truly trusted. My son, Michael. I chose a neutral location, a quiet cafe away from the hotel, under the guise of discussing wedding preparations. When he arrived, his usual cheerful demeanor was shadowed by a faint weariness. We spoke of caterers and flower arrangements for a while, the mundane masking the momentous. Then, with a voice that felt alien even to myself, I said, "Michael, I need to ask you something important. Something that might shake your world." His eyes, so like his father's, widened slightly. "Mom, what is it? You look pale." I took a deep breath, marshaling all my strength. "It's about your father and Clara." The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Michael's face paled, his jaw tightening. "Mom, what are you implying?" I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, not pure surprise, but perhaps a confirmation of a nascent fear. "I'm not implying. Son, I'm telling you, I suspect your father is having an affair with Clara, and more disturbingly, I believe they are trying to sell the hotel from under us." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael sat utterly still, his knuckles white as he gripped the rim of his coffee cup. Then, in a low, controlled voice that barely concealed a tremor, he said, "Mom, you're not entirely wrong. I've suspected for a while about the affair. And about the hotel." My heart lurched. "You knew," I whispered, a mixture of relief and renewed pain washing over me. "Why didn't you say anything?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with a grief that mirrored my own. "I've been collecting evidence, Mom. For months. I didn't want to alarm you without solid proof. I wanted to protect you. To protect us." He then laid out a chilling tale, far more intricate and sinister than my own fragmented suspicions. He had first noticed Robert and Clara's unusual closeness several months ago, dismissing it initially as an innocent mentorship. But then came the whispers from staff, the strange expenses on the hotel accounts that didn't align with regular operations, the sudden change in Robert's schedule. Michael, who handled much of the hotel's digital marketing and administrative systems, started digging. He discovered a series of increasingly elaborate schemes. "He's been forging your signature, Mom," Michael began, his voice barely audible. "On financial documents, on power of attorney papers, on applications for a shell company he set up. A ghost company, designed to funnel hotel assets." My hand flew to my mouth, a gasp catching in my throat. Forgery. That was a criminal offense. He's been systematically transferring our intellectual property rights, some of the hotel's long-term contracts, even some smaller land parcels we own, into this shell company, named Coastal Holdings LLC. Clara is listed as a silent partner, holding significant shares. The details came tumbling out, each one a fresh stab to my heart. Robert had been systematically siphoning funds, creating fictitious invoices, diverting revenue streams. He had been planning to sell the Grandmont to a large real estate conglomerate, not just as a property, but as a completely stripped asset, leaving me and Michael with nothing but debt and a hollow shell. The plan was to finalize the asset transfers, then push through the sale of the physical building itself, pocketing the proceeds through Coastal Holdings, and then disappear. I even found evidence of offshore accounts, Mom, and a detailed plan for them to leave the country right after the wedding. The wedding. The wedding was merely a smokescreen, a final act of betrayal before their grand escape. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Michael then explained how he had been meticulously documenting everything. Screenshots of emails, copies of forged documents, recordings of suspicious phone calls, even a secretly recorded conversation between Robert and Clara discussing their escape route. He had been working with a private investigator, discreetly gathering intelligence, and had already consulted with a trusted lawyer, Mr. Davies, an old family friend who specialized in corporate fraud. He said, "We have a very strong case, Mom, but we need to act carefully, strategically." A strange calm descended upon me amidst the chaos of emotions. The initial shock gave way to a cold, burning resolve. My son, my brilliant, loyal son, had not only seen the danger, but had already begun to fight it. We were not alone. "What do we do now, Michael?" I asked, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. He looked at me, his eyes reflecting a newfound maturity, a steely determination. "We play their game, Mom. We don't let on that we know anything. We play normal. And we work with Mr. Davies to build an airtight case, to freeze their assets, and to stop them before they can destroy everything." Our secret alliance began that very day, forged in the crucible of betrayal. Michael and I met with Mr. Davies in his discreet downtown office. He was a man with kind eyes and a sharp legal mind, his face etched with concern as we laid out the full, sordid tale. "This is a profound breach of trust, Mrs. Vance, Michael," he stated gravely, after reviewing Michael's meticulously compiled evidence, "and a deeply criminal one. Forgery, fraud, attempted grand larceny, conspiracy to commit fraud. The charges will be severe." Mr. Davies outlined our strategy. First, we would file a confidential complaint with the appropriate authorities, outlining the allegations without revealing our hand to Robert and Clara. Simultaneously, he would prepare an emergency motion for a court order to freeze all of Robert's and Clara's known assets, including those linked to Coastal Holdings LLC, and to block any impending sale of the Grandmont. "Timing is crucial," he emphasized. "We need to secure these orders before they can complete any further transactions or flee the country." The most difficult part of the plan was the requirement for Michael and me to continue playing normal. We had to maintain our usual routines, attend family dinners, engage in seemingly heartfelt discussions about wedding plans, all while knowing the monstrous truth lurking beneath the surface. It was a psychological torment unlike any I had ever experienced. Every smile I offered Robert felt like a betrayal of my own soul. Every kind word I spoke to Clara, knowing her complicity, tasted like ash in my mouth. The wedding, originally scheduled for 2 months out, became a central point of our deception. We couldn't let it proceed, as it was likely their trigger for escape. But we couldn't cancel it either. Not without raising suspicion. We need to delay it, Michael suggested, a pained look on his face. Casually, for a valid reason. We concocted a story about needing more time to finalize the intricate details of a grand European honeymoon Michael had supposedly planned as a surprise for Clara, claiming it required meticulous booking during peak season. Clara, to our surprise, accepted the delay with only a slight hesitation, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. It confirmed our fears that the wedding itself was merely a logistical step in their criminal timeline. Robert, too, seemed mildly perturbed, but quickly regained his composure, nodding approvingly at Michael's thoughtfulness. The days that followed stretched into an agonizing eternity. I felt like an actress in a macabre play, constantly performing, constantly on guard. My heart ached for Michael, who had to endure the constant presence of his betraying father and his two-faced fiancée. He would often retreat to his office, working tirelessly, feigning commitment to hotel operations, while secretly coordinating with Mr. Davies and the authorities. He set up a secure, encrypted communication channel for us, discussing updates in hushed tones late at night. We learned that Robert and Clara were indeed accelerating their plans. They had begun actively inviting real estate investors to the hotel for site visits, trying to push through a quick sale. Michael, armed with Mr. Davies' legal instructions, subtly sabotaged these attempts. He would accidentally misplace key documents, or ensure that unforeseen maintenance issues arose during investor tours, or simply present less than enthusiastic appraisals of the property's potential. He even went as far as planting seeds of doubt among the more reputable investors, subtly hinting at pending legal disputes or complex ownership structures that could delay any acquisition. The investors, sensing complications, quickly lost interest. The frustration on Robert's and Clara's faces became increasingly palpable. Their carefully constructed plan was hitting snags. Meanwhile, Mr. Davies worked swiftly. The initial complaint was filed, prompting a discreet investigation by economic crime units. Weeks turned into a month, then 2. The emotional toll was immense. I lost weight. My sleep became fitful, punctuated by nightmares. Yet, a part of me felt strangely alive, fueled by a righteous anger and a fierce determination to protect what was mine, what was ours. The Grandmont was more than just a building. It was the embodiment of my life's work, my memories, my very identity. I would not let them steal it. One evening, I overheard a snippet of conversation between Robert and Clara from his study. "The investors are backing out, Robert." Clara's voice was sharp, edged with panic. "Michael is making this impossible. We need to move faster." Robert's reply was a low growl. "He's just being difficult. I'll handle him. We stick to the plan. I've already wired another significant portion to the offshore account. We just need to finalize the last few transfers before the end of the month. Then we push for the sale, no matter what." My blood ran cold. Offshore accounts. They were indeed preparing to flee. This confirmed the urgency. Michael, receiving word from Mr. Davies, informed me that the police investigation was intensifying. They had uncovered a web of shell corporations, laundered money, and detailed escape routes. The authorities were ready to move. They just needed the right moment, the smoking gun, to catch them red-handed, not just with evidence on paper, but in the act. The decisive night arrived suddenly, an unexpected crescendo to our long, agonizing wait. It was late on a Friday evening, the hotel mostly quiet, save for a few late check-ins and the hum of the kitchen preparing for the next morning. Michael and I were in my private sitting room, ostensibly discussing a new marketing campaign, but our conversation was hushed, urgent. Mr. Davies had just called, informing us that the authorities had intercepted communications indicating Robert and Clara, along with their key accomplices, an unscrupulous accountant and a crooked notary public, were planning to meet in Robert's study within the hour. Their objective: to gather all remaining hard copy evidence, finalize the last asset transfers, and prepare for their immediate departure. The next morning, they intended to execute their escape. This was it. The moment we had been waiting for. "They're going to make a run for it tonight, Mom," Michael whispered, his face grim. "The police are mobilizing. They want us to stay calm, act natural, and be ready to give them access when they signal." My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of fear and anticipation. The culmination of months of deception, of pain, of quiet resolve, was upon us. We waited, the silence in the sitting room thick with tension. Every minute stretched into an eternity. I could hear the distant murmur of the ocean, the gentle chime of a grandfather clock in the hall. Sounds that normally brought me comfort now felt like a taunt. I gripped Michael's hand, seeking and offering silent reassurance. His hand was cold, but his grip firm. Finally, the signal came. A discreet text message from Mr. Davies to Michael's encrypted phone. "Go." Michael nodded, his eyes meeting mine. A silent communication of courage. We walked out of the sitting room, feigning a casual stroll towards the main lobby. As we approached the discreet service entrance, a plain-clothed officer emerged, nodding subtly. He led us to a hidden vantage point, a small storage room with a reinforced door overlooking the corridor that led to Robert's study. Through a small, cleverly concealed peephole, we could see the corridor. Moments later, a flurry of activity erupted. Robert's study door, which had been closed, now stood ajar. We could see him inside, hunched over his desk, frantically sifting through stacks of documents. Clara was there too, stuffing files into a large travel bag, her movements jerky and panicked. Two other men, the accountant and the notary, were also present, meticulously shredding papers in a portable shredder, their faces contorted with stress. The room was a whirlwind of frantic fantastic, illicit activity. They're consolidating everything, getting ready to vanish. Michael breathed, his voice tight. My stomach churned. It was horrifying to witness, a confirmation of the depths of their depravity. Just then, another signal, a barely perceptible nod from the officer. Then, the world exploded. Suddenly, from the shadows of the corridor, a tactical unit of police officers, dressed in dark uniforms, materialized. They moved with a silent, synchronized efficiency that was terrifying to behold. "Police, don't move," a commanding voice boomed. The study door was kicked open, splintering with a resounding crack. The room instantly froze. Robert, his head snapping up, dropped a file, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Clara let out a strangled shriek, dropping the travel bag, its contents spilling onto the floor, stacks of crisp currency, passports, and a thick wad of what looked like airline tickets. The accountant froze mid-shred, his hands hovering over the machine. The notary, pale as a ghost, simply slumped against the wall. "Robert Vance, Clara Thorne, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering," the lead officer declared, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. The room was filled with the rapid click of handcuffs. Robert, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and terror, tried to lunge forward, but he was quickly restrained. "You can't do this. This is a mistake. I'll sue you all," he spat, his voice hoarse. Clara, now weeping hysterically, screamed, "No, please, this isn't real." Michael, Tell them. Robert, tell them. Her eyes, wild and pleading, met Michael's through the open doorway. My son's face was a mixture of profound sorrow and grim satisfaction. He said nothing, simply held my hand tighter. Watching Robert, the man I had loved and built a life with, being cuffed and led away like a common criminal, was a surreal and profoundly painful experience. His eyes, once full of warmth, were now cold and empty, devoid of any recognition or remorse as they passed over me. It was as if he had always been a stranger, and I had simply been too naive to see it. Clara, dragged away, kept screaming Michael's name, her pleas echoing through the now silent corridor. The other two accomplices, looking defeated, were escorted out as well. The raid was swift, efficient, and utterly devastating. After they were all removed, the forensic team moved in, meticulously collecting evidence, photographing the scene, bagging documents. The hotel, usually a place of comfort and joy, now felt like a crime scene, tainted by the stench of deceit. Michael and I emerged from our hiding place, our faces etched with the night's horrors. The officers offered their condolences. Mr. Davies arrived, his face relieved but weary. The ordeal was far from over, but the first decisive battle had been won. The Grandmont was safe, for now. The legal process that followed was protracted and emotionally draining, a public airing of our private sorrow. Robert, Clara, and their accomplices were formally charged. The evidence Michael had so diligently collected, combined with the police's findings of secret bank accounts, forged documents, and the detailed escape plans, formed an ironclad case. The prosecution painted a vivid picture of a calculated, cold-hearted scheme to defraud, to steal a legacy built over generations. The initial news hit the community like a bombshell. The Grandmont was a local institution, and Robert Vance was a respected figure. The scandal rocked the city, fueling endless speculation and gossip. For me, it was a crucible. Every day, I had to face the whispers, the knowing glances, the thinly veiled pity. But I also received an outpouring of support from loyal staff, friends, and even some regular guests who expressed their solidarity. This gave me strength, a reminder of the good that still existed amidst the overwhelming darkness. During the discovery phase, more shocking details emerged. Robert had been systematically siphoning funds for over 2 years, not just months. Clara's involvement was deeper than we first thought. She was not merely a paramour but an active and enthusiastic participant, having manipulated key staff members and provided internal financial data. The offshore accounts contained millions, a fortune they intended to abscond with, leaving us with a mountain of legal debt and a ruined business. The sheer scale of their betrayal was staggering. I had to testify, a harrowing experience that forced me to recount the intimate details of my marriage, the discovery of the affair, and the calculated deception. Facing Robert in court, seeing the cold indifference in his eyes, solidified my resolve. There was no going back, no chance of reconciliation. The man I knew, the man I loved, was a ghost. Michael was a pillar of strength throughout this period. He managed the hotel operations, dealt with the staff, and navigated the financial fallout with a maturity beyond his years. He also bravely testified, presenting his meticulously gathered evidence, his voice clear and unwavering as he detailed his father's crimes. His testimony was crucial, undeniable. Finally, after months of agonizing legal battles, the verdict came down. Robert Vance was found guilty on all counts: fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering. Clara Thorne was also found guilty of similar charges, though with a slightly lesser sentence given her role was deemed secondary, albeit significant. The accountant and notary received lighter sentences for their complicity. Robert was sentenced to a substantial prison term, his name and legacy utterly destroyed. Clara received a shorter but still significant prison sentence. The offshore accounts were successfully frozen, and the illicitly transferred assets were painstakingly recovered and returned to the Grandmont. The court's decision was a vindication, a profound sense of justice delivered. The Grandmont was officially returned to my sole ownership, free from any claims by Robert or his shell corporations. The marriage was formally dissolved. A quiet, somber end to nearly 5 decades of shared life. The legal battle was over, but the emotional scars remained, deep and aching. In the immediate aftermath, the Grandmont was a shell of its former self. The scandal had driven away many guests, and the staff, though loyal, were shaken. Michael, however, rose to the occasion with an extraordinary vigor. He launched a massive rebranding campaign, emphasizing the hotel's resilience, its commitment to ethical practices, and its cherished history. He introduced new, innovative marketing strategies, attracting a younger clientele while retaining the loyal patrons who had stood by us. He revamped the hotel's online presence, streamlined operations, and reinvested in renovations, breathing new life into every corner of the venerable building. I stepped back from the day-to-day operations, gradually allowing Michael to take the reins. He had earned it. I saw in him not just a son, but a visionary leader, someone capable of guiding the Grandmont into a new era. Our relationship, once defined by mother-son affection, had now deepened into a profound partnership, built on mutual respect and shared resilience. We were a team, survivors who had faced the storm and emerged stronger. Life at the Grandmont slowly began to heal. The once hushed corridors filled with laughter again. New staff members were hired, bringing fresh energy. The old wounds began to scab over, replaced by the quiet hum of recovery and growth. I found solace in the simple routines of my life, tending to my rose garden, reading by the fireplace, and watching the sun set over the ocean from my private balcony. The burden of constant vigilance had lifted, replaced by a sense of calm, a peace I hadn't realized I had lost. About a year after Robert's conviction, a letter arrived. It was addressed to me, in an unfamiliar, shaky handwriting. My heart seized with a familiar dread. I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling. It was from Robert, written from prison, a plea for forgiveness. He spoke of remorse, of regret, of the profound mistakes he had made, the ruin he had brought upon himself and others. He acknowledged the pain he had caused, the destruction of our family, the loss of his reputation. He asked for my forgiveness, not to be released, not to return, but for his own peace, and perhaps a small measure of mine. I read the letter several times, each word a painful reminder of the past. The anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak, all resurfaced. But beneath it, a surprising emotion stirred: weariness. I was tired of the anger, tired of the bitterness, tired of letting his actions dictate my emotional landscape. Forgiveness, I realized, was not about absolving him of his crimes. It was about liberating myself from the shackles of his betrayal. It was about choosing to release the venom from my own heart, not for his sake, but for mine. I didn't reply to the letter. I didn't need to. The act of reading it, of acknowledging his remorse, however belated or self-serving, was enough. I allowed myself to feel the pain one last time, then consciously, deliberately, let it go. The anger receded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. My life had irrevocably changed. I was no longer a wife, but a woman standing on her own 2 feet, stronger, wiser, and more independent than I had ever imagined possible. The Grandmont thrived under Michael's leadership, its future bright. Our family, though scarred, had found a new equilibrium. I was no longer defined by tragedy or betrayal, but by resilience, by love, and by the quiet strength I had found within myself. I walked into my new life, independent and serene, a survivor reborn,